Alrighty. In this final video of this series, we're going to answer the questions in part 4. Remember that we're going through our reading and use of English worksheet about the American Revolution, specifically the period between the years 1775 and 1783. We've been exploring many reading comprehension strategies. Um, for example, skimming for vocabulary, identifying the main idea, the text structure as well, analyzing relationships and connections, specifically cause and effect, also distinguishing facts and opinions. And today, in this video, we're going to focus on purpose, tone, and audience. Let's begin with the purpose. So the question that we have here is, why do you think the author wrote this text? To inform, persuade, entertain, etc. Give 2 examples from the text to support your answer. And then we have a box with a series of steps that we're going to follow. So the first one is identify the dominant mode of writing, skim the text, and decide if it's mainly narrative, explanatory, persuasive, or a mix. Okay, so we've already skimmed the text a couple of times, so we already know how to answer this particular question. So in this case, it's a mix. So it's an explanatory narrative. So we can see this in the frequent use of the past to narrate the events. Also, the way that they are explained with names, events, specific dates, causes, consequences, etc. Highlight value-laden phrases. Look for adjectives, adverbs that signal the author's stance. Okay, so um, okay, so we can find those here. For example, these are value-laden phrases. Many Americans speak with great pride. Okay, so of course that is value-laden. About the achievement of their forefathers in establishing their nation. The tales of courage, heroism, and cunning have been told so many times that it can be difficult to separate the truth from fiction. What cannot be disputed is that a relatively small group of colonies defeated one of the great superpowers of the 18th century. So all of this is value-laden in favor of the colonists, of course. Okay, so we're going to copy that and paste it here. Okay, so what else? So this part about the superpower. Um, what cannot be disputed is that a relatively small group of colonies defeated one of the great superpowers of the 18th century, preparing the way for other revolutions that followed. Okay. So remember that these phrases are value laden because of the language that they use. In this case, we can highlight great pride, achievement, um, courage, heroism, cunning. So here, what cannot be disputed Okay, so that's also value laden, is that a relatively small group of colonists defeated one of the great superpowers. So this is a contrast here. So between small and great. Okay. Then note the presence of a thesis. Ask, does the text just inform me or is it trying to convince me of something? So we can say that it is mostly informative with undertones of admiration towards the colonists, of course. Decide the primary goal, choose the strongest purpose, inform, persuade, entertain, criticize, and rank any secondary purposes. Okay, so we could say here that the primary goal is to inform, and then, okay, I have some notes here with me, and then the secondary goal is to subtly persuade readers of the colonists' heroism. Okay, so as you watch this video and read what I'm writing here, I hope that this is making sense to you based on the text. Okay, then match evidence to purpose. Select one or two quotes that directly reflect this purpose. Okay, so we will copy this here and paste it here. Okay, so most paragraphs are highly informative with names, dates, events, places, etc. So let's scroll up and choose one. Mm, okay, maybe this one. Okay, as tensions worsened, only a direct confrontation was needed to start an all-out conflict. So this is an objective fact about a conflict that was escalating. Then, in April 1775, General Gage ordered 700 soldiers to seize weapons stored by the colonists in Concord. So again, that's a historical fact with a date, a protagonist, the number of soldiers, the action, a place. So all of that took place. It's an objective fact. A warning was sent, and when the British reached Lexington, a short skirmish broke out. That's also true. Shots were exchanged, and the war had begun. And for the secondary goal, which is to subtly persuade readers of the colonists' heroism, so apart from the introduction that we already pasted there, we also have more passages highlighting the heroism of the colonists. Okay, so let's see here. Okay, so here, look, we're going to select this part, then we're going to take it down here and paste it. At the start, the British seemed almost certain to win. They controlled the seas and could access any East Coast port. So they're showing us the magnitude of the British Army, of this superpower. So remember that while is used for contrast, while the colonists had only a small army. But, so again, another contrast, but the colonists knew the terrain, were used to hunting and foraging, and fought for self-governance rather than just for pay. Okay, so um, they didn't fight for pay. Also, despite being the smaller side in this conflict, they knew the terrain, they were used to hand, so they had a series of skills uh, that made them, yes, a good rival for this great superpower that was the British Army. Okay, so we have all the elements there. Now, um, we're ready to write an answer that takes all of this into account. So let's see. Okay, the question is, why do you think the author wrote this text? To inform, persuade, entertain, etc. Give two examples from the text to support your answer. So we can say that the author wrote the text primarily to inform readers about the history of the American Revolution and more specifically about the American Revolutionary War. For instance, most paragraphs include factual information about the conflict between the American colonists and the British Empire. Okay, so we need to show examples. The final sentence of the text, which reads, okay, now we will introduce a quote here. Okay, so we will just copy and paste it for the sake of time. The war, okay. Which reads, okay, we're missing the letter T there. The war effectively ended. Okay. Okay, we're going to remove that period and we're going to add here that this is an example of the author's primary purpose. Okay, so why do you think the author wrote this text? Give two examples from the text to support your answer. So we already stated that there is a primary purpose, which is to inform. But here, in the steps, we also stated that there is a secondary goal, which is to subtly persuade readers of the colonists' heroism. Now we need to put that in the answer as well. As a secondary goal, the author subtly attempts to persuade the readers, no, just readers in general, readers of the colonists' heroism with sentences like, okay, okay, now we're going to use these ones, the ones that we pasted here. Okay, so I will select all of this and put it here just to have it closer. Like, okay, we're just going to use that part. and um, this one. Okay, as a secondary goal, the author sadly attempts to persuade readers of the colonists' heroism with sentences like many Americans speak with great pride about the achievement of their forefathers in establishing their nation, and what cannot be disputed is that a relatively small group of colonists defeated one of the great superpowers of the 18th century. Okay. Okay, now we can delete this. Okay. This is a tip, okay? Always double check whether you're answering the question in full or not, okay? There may be something missing. So let's go back to the question. Why do you think the author wrote this text? To inform, persuade, entertain, etc.? Okay, so we already answered that. Give two examples from the text to support your answer. Okay, and we gave more than two examples. In this case, we gave three. With sentences like, okay, so maybe we can eliminate one to comply more strictly with what was requested in the question. Okay, there we go. So that is the purpose, and these were the steps. Okay, let's move on to tone. All right. Describe the tone, formal, neutral, e.g., formal, neutral, passionate, proud, and give one example of language that shows this tone. So we could say here that the tone is predominantly formal, yet subtly proud. On Yes, so now I want to refer to formal and proud. So these are two characteristics of the tone. So I will use on the one hand, and I will use on the other hand. So remember that a good strategy is to lay the ground for your writing by preparing the structure that you will use. So on the one hand, the author's formal tone is evidenced by the dominant objectivity with which the events are presented throughout the text. Okay, then, yeah, now we need to give an example here of one of the events. Yeah, so let's not repeat the same one that we already used. Okay, so here we have one here. Throughout the text, and we'll just use E, G like this. So it's E period, G period, comma, okay? E.g., then we're going to quote this sentence. Okay, in 1770, further taxes were imposed into America. Okay, then period. On the other hand, the author's sadly proud tone is reflected in the choice of words to of the choice of words that refer to the colonists with sentences like no, not like, I don't like, such as, okay, and Okay, one of the first ones. Mm, like this one, such as, okay. Uh, the tone is predominantly formal yet subtly proud. On the one hand, the author's formal tone is evidenced by the dominant objectivity with which the events are presented throughout the text. So don't forget to explain, okay, to explain your thoughts in writing. That's very important. E.g., so there we have one example. In 1770, further taxes were imposed on goods imported to America. On the other hand, the author's sadly proud tone is reflected in the choice of words that refer to the colonists, with sentences such as many Americans speak with great pride about the achievement of their forefathers in establishing their nation. So that pretty much answers the whole question. Okay, now let's move on to the next question, which is about the audience. Excuse me. So the question is, who is the intended audience? Explain your answer based on vocabulary, detail, and style. Okay, so this is very important. We need to base our answer on vocabulary, detail, and style. So, okay, no, I will create a table here. Okay, with 3 columns, one for vocabulary, another one for detail, and style. So what can we say about vocabulary? Um, okay, so we see some specialized historical and academic terms. Yeah, so for example, the use of forefathers, um, religious forefathers, comma, religious objectors, trade restrictions, the Stamp Act, etc. Okay. Then in terms of detail, we're given specific names, dates, and events. Um, for example, the 7 Years' War, the 1765 Stamp Act, the Treaty of Paris. So remember, this is not our final answer. This is the thought process that will lead us to the final answer. Okay. The Boston Massacre, etc. Okay, that's enough. Then it also explains causes and strategies. For example, for British trade restrictions. So that's a cause. Smuggling, that's a consequence. The British military advantage. Um, no, it really explains military advantages for both sides, etc. It also offers contextual explanation For example, the colonists' origins, the reasons for smuggling. So that was the increase in taxation, smuggling, the significance of Lexington, and Concord, etc. It also omits more specific details and deeper analysis. So that's the plural of analysis. Analysis, which would be suitable for a more advanced audience, such as history majors. So majors are undergraduate students. Then about the style, what can we say about the style? We could say that it's mostly formal and informative. The narrative flow is achieved through linking devices, which is also one of the topics that we've been covering in relation to narrative tenses. For example, after the 7 Years' War in 1765, in April 1775, etc. It also uses subheadings for thematic organization of the different sections. And there is also implied significance. Okay, so for example, uses phrases indicating historical importance. Okay, so for example here, we could include some phrases like preparing the way for other revolutions, marked the first time a major European power faced armed revolt within its own territory, etc. Also, the shot heard around the world, etc. Okay. All right. So with all of these elements, now we can start drafting a definite answer. Okay. So our answer must be based on this. So we will copy vocabulary, detail, and style. Based on vocabulary, detail, and style, it is possible to argue that the text was written. So we already said, okay, no, there is an important detail here that I omitted. Implied significance uses phrases indicating historical importance, but without overly persuasive, without overly persuasive, or emotional language targeting younger children. Okay, so we know that it's not for a history major. Okay, we're going to highlight that. Uh, Nor for younger children. Okay, so we could say that this is for high school students and general readers who want to seek information about this historical period. So the text was written for um, an audience of high school students and general adult readers interested in the American Revolution, particularly in the 1775-1783 period. Okay, so this is the first part of the answer. Here we state what the audience is, but we already announced that this answer is based on vocabulary, detail, and style. Okay, so now we need to expand on each of those points. Okay, so we're going to use organizers first, second, and finally. Okay, this is a good way to structure your text. And we're going to divide it into paragraphs. First, in terms of vocabulary, the text uses, okay, now we're going to copy this. The text uses specialized historical and academic terms. Of course, we cannot present it like this, so we will introduce a non-restrictive clause with examples such as forefathers, religious objectors, and trade restrictions. So just three, okay, the rule of three examples, unwritten rule, um, in order not to saturate the text, okay? Um, Okay. Second, regarding the level of detail, the text abundantly shows specific names, dates, and events. It also explains. So now I'm putting this information into a coherent paragraph. Okay. It also explains causes and strategies. Okay, we're going to include these examples with e.g., comma, British trade restrictions, smuggling, and military advantages for both sides, and offers contextual explanations. So again, we're going to use an e.g. parenthesis, e.g. Okay, and we're going to copy this. E.g., colonists' origins, reasons for smuggling, and significance of Lexington and Concord. Okay, good. Yeah. But there are also omissions. Okay, so maybe a period, okay, to make the sentence not that long. However, it omits a more specific and in-depth analysis that would be more suitable for a history major. So now we're excluding the group that we do not think is the target audience. Okay, finally, now we need to refer to style. Finally, the style is mostly formal and informative. The narrative flow is achieved by the frequent use of linking devices. Now, again, we will use an e.g. parenthesis. And in April. Okay, of course, these are just examples. Okay, the text is thematically divided in subheadings. Okay, in this case, we're going to use another e.g. parenthesis. The war begins, and we're going to use quotes here. And the British surrender. Okay. The author also uses phrases indicating historical importance. Okay, for example, paste. Okay. Okay, I will just copy all of that and we'll put it here. For example, preparing the way for other revolutions marked the first time a major European power faced armed revolt within its own territory. We're going to use quotes in all of them in order to avoid confusion. Okay. And okay, without overly persuasive or emotional language targeting younger children. So we're excluding another group and very explicitly saying why we are excluding them. Okay, so let's double check the question. Who is the intended audience? Explain your answer based on vocabulary, detail, and style. Based on vocabulary, detail, and style, it is possible to argue that the text was written for an audience of high school students and general adult readers interested in the American Revolution, particularly in the 1775-1783 period. First, in terms of vocabulary, the text uses specialized historical and academic terms such as forefathers, religious objectors, and trade restrictions. Second, regarding the level of detail, the text abundantly shows specific names, dates, and events. It also explains causes and strategies, and the examples, and offers contextual explanations. However, it omits a more specific and in-depth analysis that would be more suitable for a history major. Finally, the style is mostly formal and informative. The narrative flow is achieved by the frequent use of linking devices. The text is thematically divided in subheadings. Okay, the examples. The author also uses phrases indicating historical importance, e.g. preparing the way for other revolutions, marked the first time a major European power faced armed revolt within its own territory. Okay, and another example, without overly persuasive or emotional language targeting younger children. Okay. Now we're ready to move on to the final question, which is point of view. Is the author's perspective objective or biased. Support your answer with evidence from the text. Okay, so here I would say that there is factual reporting. So these are just the ideas, okay, that will lead us to the answer. There is factual reporting in most paragraphs, years, dates, protagonists, events, consequences, etc. Uh, so he also avoids extreme, uh, despite being in favor of the American colonists, the author avoids extreme rhetoric. Uh, so, for example, he acknowledges um, Britain as a superpower. Sup no, that's not what I want to write. Superpower. And as we already said, it is slightly biased towards the colonists. Um, okay, so he highlights their virtues. Okay, so for example, in one part, the author, their virtues. Okay, the author states that they knew the terrain, um, were used to hunting and foraging, and fought for self-governance. So remember that all of the answers must be evidence-based. Uh, okay, he also labels British policies as negative. So in one part, he says, pick their pockets, remember, because of the increase in taxation. Also try to impose, okay, the use of the verb impose, very strong verb, impose trade restrictions. Okay, no, this is policies, policies. Try to impose trade restrictions. Uh, and okay, yeah, mostly that. Um, okay, there are omissions. For example, th there is no mention of the rationale for taxes after the French and Indian War, which is also known as the 7 Years' War. So it's just given, okay? It's just a fact given, but the text doesn't explain the reasons behind that increase in taxation. As we've already said, there is also value laden language. So, for example, when he talks about the colonist motives, the author uses words like heroism, cunning, and achievement. And then for British motives, there is implied uh, greed. Okay, again, the infamous phrase, pick their pockets. Yeah, it depicts them as thieves. And there is evidence of objectivity, objectivity throughout the whole text. So now with these elements, we can start drafting a final answer. The author aims for objectivity, but reveals subtle bias. So is bias countable or uncountable? Yeah, I will double check that with my dictionary. Bias. By the way, this is a dictionary that I like. Okay, preference. Countable, usually singular and uncountable. So it can be used in either way. So I will use it as an uncountable, but reveals subtle bias through emphasis on colonists' resilience and negative framing uh, of British policies. Okay, so here I'm stating two opposing um, perspectives. Okay, so I will structure this with on the one hand and on the other hand. Okay, so on the one hand, objectivity, yeah, because that's the first view that I stated here. Objectivity is achieved through actual reporting of the events that took place, showing names, dates, and places. The author also avoids extreme rhetoric by acknowledging the strengths, not just the strengths, um, of the British Empire, of the British Empire. Um, so, for example, uh, he refers to them as one of the great superpowers, a major European power, and also to the fact that they controlled the seas. Okay, we're going to use quotes here. A major European power. They control the seas. Okay, period. Okay, now on the other hand, we will describe the subtle bias. On the other hand, a slight bias in favor of the American colonists is shown through praising of their virtues. For example, they knew, no, they knew the terrain, uh, were used to hunting and foraging, and uh, fought for self-governance. Okay, so I think and is missing here. Okay, great. Um, so is shown through praising of their virtues, omission of the British rationale. So that's the reasoning, okay, the reasons behind something, or raising taxes after the 7 Years' War. Okay, no examples there, of course, because it's an omission, and negative framing of the British. Yeah, but I don't want to use British again, so I will use the empire's policies. For example, picked their pockets. Okay, now let's put everything together. The author aims for objectivity but reveals subtle bias through emphasis on colonists' resilience in negative framing of British policies. On the one hand, objectivity is achieved through factual reporting of events that took place, showing names, dates, and places. The author also avoids extreme rhetoric by acknowledging the strengths of the British Empire. Okay, then we have examples. On the other hand, a slight bias in favor of the American colonists is shown through praising of their virtues. Okay, then examples: omission of the British rationale for raising taxes after the 7 Years' War, and negative framing of the empire's policies. So very important. I've already said this, but we need to double check that we're actually answering the question in full. That's very, very important. Is the author's perspective objective or biased? So we are answering that very thoroughly. Support your answer with evidence from the text. Okay, we also included evidence. Okay, and here I was a little worried that the sentence might not be parallel. On the other hand, a slight bias in favor of the American colonists is shown through, okay, praising, that's a noun, omission, that's a noun, and negative framing, that's a noun. Okay, so it's parallel. Okay, so with this answer, we are concluding our series of reading comprehension videos about the American Revolution. For those of you who are my students in the upper intermediate course, if you have any questions, please feel free to email me. I'll be happy to help, and stay tuned for more videos like this one.